Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football, presented by Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. I'm your host, Blake Monroe, where I'm joined this morning by Bob Shipley and Jerry Hamilton. A lot to talk about today, but first, tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking this morning. Obviously, we love to see that.
And Blake, guys, I saw somebody in enemy territory checked in from enemy territory over here. I don't know if you can
go. Right here, Clayton.
We found Bo Davis's handle. Baton Rouge. There you go.
Oh man.
Good to hear from you, Coach Davis.
we are 12 days away, Colt McCoy days, if you want to get technical, away from spring football here. Hard to believe it just get inches closer and closer. But some big news across the college football world yesterday, guys, as they changed the early signing period. Again, I want to get y'all's thoughts on that. Jerry, I'll let you start.
Yeah, so Pete Thamel of ESPN reported that, and this has been ongoing discussions, but that there's the December signing period, the early signing period, we'll get into a discussion later. They're going to end up moving to 3 signing periods. I think that'll happen in the 26 class. But for this 25 cycle, it's expected that the early signing period, the December signing period, is going to change from December 20th through 22nd. That range to December 4th through 6th. I think it's a move that's a no-brainer. It had to be done for a multitude of reasons. First, the college football playoff begins December 21st. So, look, you couldn't butt up a signing period that Wednesday to Friday, whether that's right before the college football playoff starts. Just from a coaching standpoint, there's just no way that was going to happen, number one. Two, now, this early signing period for high school kids is before the portal opens in December. And that's the big thing. I thought one of the big issues, Coach, that these college coaching staffs had was trying to get their high school kids signed while the portal window's open. If you're in a conference championship game, you're dealing with that. If you're getting ready for the playoff, you were dealing with that. Last year it was only 4 teams, but now it's 12. That's a total different ball game. They had to make a move. I don't know, from your standpoint, having been in those coaches' meetings and in those recruiting offices, kind of what your initial thoughts were on that.
Wow, I don't know. I'm going to have to let that sink in a little bit. That kind of blindsided me this morning. That makes sense. I mean, it certainly makes sense. There's no doubt about that. And, of course, my initial response, I kind of look at it also from the high school coach's perspective. And now you're going to have some distractions and, which is, it's not that big a deal. People deal with it, but you've got, teams trying to make it to the state championship and, there could be a little drama, but that's not a big deal.
Well, to your point though, Coach, like when it was December, around that December 20th date, that might affect 4 or 5 teams in state championship games. Now you bumped it back to this first week, Wednesday in December. You're talking about a lot of teams in regional semifinals, regional finals that week. So it definitely will affect more high school coaching staff, because obviously the teams that are playing that deep, I mean, in the 4A, 5A, 6A level, all have a number of Division I guys. So the other part of that that's interesting to me, and that I've been for, and you guys know, it's one of my soapboxes. If I've said this for years, when the NCAA started allowing spring official visits and summer official visits, there's no reason to wait until December for these kids to sign. And the question is, how many of these kids would sign in the last Wednesday in June? I think that's where this is headed. I think it'll probably happen in the 26 class. It will not happen in 25. Pete Thamel reported yesterday also that they're going to talk more about that, meet again about that in June of this year. So what that does is that kicks the can down the road for the 26 cycle. But I do expect that to happen, Blake, and Coach Shipley as well, because, now that you have pretty much the in-school, in-home visit in January for when Steve Sarkisian, these staffs are out on the road. I mean, they're coming to schools. Parents are coming to the schools. They're having an hour in-school visit with these kids. Then you have official visits are starting in April. There's kids in Texas visiting Arizona State the second weekend in April. I mean, and TCU has a number of kids coming in the first week in May. So it makes sense with the portal, with where things are headed in college football, 12-team playoff, Will that eventually be 16? Who knows? But, it just makes sense if we're going to keep accelerating the recruiting process. And now you add in that the collectives can just go right in and start talking with the prospects, right? I mean, you're going to start seeing this recruiting process accelerated even more. So it makes total sense to have a late June signing period to me before the season starts.
All right, guys, like I said, plenty to talk about. But before we get into all of that, I need to tell folks out there about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. And since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. This team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms consider to be too risky. Rick Vavro and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they do solid quality work each and every time. That's Austin Underground, and be sure to check them out. And we want to thank Rick and the Austin Underground team for sponsoring today's show. Well, we talked about early signing period, and recruiting goes hand in hand with that, Jerry Hamilton. And I know you got a lot of recruiting news, so go ahead and break it down for folks.
Yeah, last 2 days have been quite hectic on the Texas recruiting front. Obviously, the June official visitor lists are being built out quickly. I've been saying on here last week or so, look, these dates we're reporting for June 7th through 9th, there's a couple of DBs. The 14th through 16th were about 10 names. Then the 21st through 23rd, when that was about 10 names, I was going to say this total number is going to be triple here by the time the spring evaluation period ends and Texas really made those decisions on who all they can get to campus for officials and who they're going to push to get on campus for official visits. Well, that process really accelerated last night. We're up to 17 official visitors confirmed for the June 21st through 23rd. That includes yesterday Zion Williams, defensive tackle from Lufkin. I don't know, Blake, if you could pull up the picture of him with the shot puts in hand, but 6'4.5", 325, large human on the defensive front, plays over the ball there at Lufkin High School, or he'll project it over the ball. He also says he'll be in Austin April 20th for the spring game. He'll make 3 visits to LSU before that Texas official visit. He's at LSU this weekend. Their spring game's on the 13th, and then he'll make a June official visit. He's also got TCU scheduled for an official visit May 3rd through 5th. Jamarcus McFarland, one of the great Texas OU recruiting battles of all time in my years in the business. Jamarcus McFarland is a distant relative of Zion Williams. I think LSU 1A, Texas 1B, A&M 3 right now in that recruitment, TCU 4. Then you got Jamie French, big time wide receiver prospect out of Mandarin High in Jacksonville. He's scheduled for June 21st through 23rd. And people always ask for comps on players. Well, who does he remind you of? Who does this guy remind you of? I'm just going to throw it out there. Jamie French reminds me of A.D. Mitchell, Adonai Mitchell, with a little more juice after the catch at the same age, a little bit more wiggle, COD after the catch at the same age. That's how talented Jamie French is to me. Top 50 ranked kid in everybody in the industry, and he'll be on campus April 6th as well. We mentioned Khalil Lockett yesterday, the wide receiver out of Saxe High, coming into 21st through 23rd. Jasper 4-star tight end Keoti Armstrong will be in June 21st through 23rd. He'll be at A&M the weekend before. I think he'll also official visit to LSU early in June. That's really the 3-team battle for Keoti Armstrong. I think he's been on A&M campus more than Texas. The interesting thing there is Texas is bringing 3 tight ends, and right now they have 3 true high priority tight ends. One, Amari Winston, committed. Then there's Nick Townsend at Dekaney. And then there's Keoti Armstrong at Jasper. And Keoti Armstrong, if somebody's asking what does he remind me of, he's the 6'5" version of Darnell Washington. He is a big dude playing tight end with really good feet, big catch radius, strong hands, very physical player. Really, he's just starting to scratch the surface at tight end, though. His best football is way out in front of him. He's 6'5", and a quarter, about 250. But watching him play 7-on-7, he can go get it. He's a really good athlete. Jasper also plays him some on defense, and he's got that physical mentality. And then a linebacker that, look, Matea is what I'm going to call him, out of San Clemente, California. 4-star kid, I think is a big-time talent. Johnny Nanson's was recruiting him at Arizona. He is going to officially visit June 21st through 23rd. I think this kid's dynamite now. He is a snap count anticipator. This guy makes plays all over the field. He's got range. He's got pursuit speed. He can play in space. He can play in coverage. They'll even line him up at safety. But he is long arm. He has a frame to add a lot of weight. I think he is a big-time linebacker prospect. So he's coming in June 21st through 23rd. And then an unofficial visitor, which I think is big for Texas, Jonah Williams, Galveston Ball. I broke that on OnTexasFootball.com last night. Jonah Williams, the 6'3", 205-pound safety / left-handed hitter in baseball that throws about 90 off the mound. He'll be at a Texas spring practice in that big weekend, April 6th. He also told me he'll be back in June for an official visit. Oklahoma's the favorite headed into the spring. They've done the best job of playing safety and baseball. There's Jonah Williams in his basketball uniform. I was down at a basketball practice in January, and then I went and watched him play basketball a couple of times as well. But he's also going to visit Oregon officially in May. He's going to go to Ohio State. He'll be back at A&M. He's got a nice visit list of schools coming up here. But I really think Oklahoma leads Texas A&M, Oregon, Ohio State right now heading into the spring. But it's big. I mean, Sarkisian and Blake Gideon were by the school in January. Both of those guys are making contact. Steve Sarkisian's involved in this recruitment, which tells you he's a high priority target. So the fact that Texas is getting Jonah Williams on campus April 6th and we'll have him on campus again in June for an official visit is big. And, you know, on TexasFootball.com, somebody kind of drew a correlation to Taylor Tatum, the running back out of Longview in that recruitment. There's one big difference. Texas never had Tatum as a priority in the 24 class. That didn't mean they didn't think he was a really good player, but he was behind 2-3 other running backs. Jonah Williams is a priority target in 25. So that's the difference between those two. But I'm sure I've missed a couple of things. There's so much going on in recruiting. I talked to a Kalen Deere, the running back from Quitman, Mississippi. This update's on Texas Football. I'll put some recruiting nuggets up this morning. I spoke with a Kylan Deere. Him and his family. He's out of Quitman, Mississippi. Tashard Choice talks to him every day. 2025 running back, big-time talent. He's on his way to Florida for a 2-day visit with his family. He's talking about getting in either April 6th or April 20th. They've also talked about a June official visit. Ole Miss is the favorite right now, I believe, entering the spring. He's got an official visit locked into A&M, June 14th through 16th, I believe. That's what he told me on those dates. He wasn't quite sure if it was the 7th or 9th or 14th through 16th. Then one of the D linemen Texas offered recently. I spoke with Derry Norris out of Port Orange and Spruce Creek in that Orlando area last night as well. He's a guy that Texas is going to have a real shot at if they make a push for him. If they roll out the red carpet after an official visit in April and get him back for June. He's 6'4", 6'3.5", 270, really athletic kid, runs on the 4x100, runs the open 100 and throws the shot put. So, you know, that says something for his athleticism. Tashard Choice and Kenny Baker made the offer. It's Tashard Choice's recruiting area. Kenny, he had some great things to say about Kenny Baker. That's on TexasFootball.com. But I'm sure I've missed a couple of things. There was so much going on, but that's the gist of it. That'll get all the questions started.
That was a lot to take in.
I don't know if Coach had time to watch all those huddles, but, you know.
Go ahead and break everything down for us right now, if you don't mind. Oh, man. Well, if you need a recap of that, we are running the scroll at the bottom. So it does a good job of
like I said, there's a lot going on in recruiting right now.
And then, of course, you can always head on over anytime, 24/7 to OnTexasFootball.com to get all that recruiting information along with team news and much more. Well, guys, one thing that I wanted to talk about as well is Xavier Worthy. He had an interview yesterday on SportsCenter, and we can't show the clip here because of copyright purposes. If you head on over to my Twitter, I posted the full interview there. But one of the things they really talked about in that interview was Stark's offense and how it makes you so well prepared for the NFL. And I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on that because, you know, Xavier said, I don't really see myself doing too much different stuff at the next level because this is what we did at Texas. So I'm curious what y'all think.
Well, I think the fact that you have pretty simply, the Manning stamp on, our offense, I mean, case closed. I mean, that to me, that says this is the offense that kids need to be a part of. If, the first name in football almost in the country, Manning, has entrusted their son to come, or grandson, nephew, to come play here. And they know what's going on.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've said this about the receiver position at Texas. One of the things is Chris Jackson's the receivers coach, does a great job. Sark's also involved. If you go to the open media session, Sark's involved. He coaches the wide receivers. It's kind of like Nick Saban coached the defensive backs at Alabama, right? Even though he's the head coach, he was involved in coaching those guys. Steve Sarkisian's hands-on coaching those guys. You can watch it if you're at those open media sessions around a spring practice or fall or an August practice. The other thing I would say is, to Xavier's point, is I think what makes the Texas offense, Steve Sarkisian's offense, so favorable for receiver and popular for receivers is he makes those guys learn all the positions, right? And there's so much pre-snap movement. There are so many, the route tree so NFL similar, right? The way he teaches the concepts and the play design of that offense, it prepares quarterbacks, it prepares wide receivers, it prepares tight ends, it prepares offensive linemen, it prepares running backs. I haven't left out a position because I think that is one of the real strengths for Steve Sarkisian as an offensive coach. It prepares every position for the NFL. And I think the longer he's at Texas and the more NFL draft picks come out of Texas that were recruited by Steve Sarkisian, you're going to hear more of that talk in NFL circles and from NFL people.
This comment, RL from Chatfield, receivers should be standing in line to play with Arch and Sark. So my question, I guess, is how much does that resonate in a recruiting pitch, Jerry, to say, hey, you come in here, you're pretty much NFL ready when you walk out?
Yeah, so I think to Coach's point, he made the most astute point, and we talked about this when Arch Manning committed to Texas. That was a huge stamp of approval for Steve Sarkisian, right? I mean, that Archie, Peyton, Eli, everybody's checking off on this one. Okay. Cooper, everybody, the whole family's checking off on this one. There were plenty of discussions between Georgia, Alabama, Texas. I don't think Clemson quite made that cut, even though Arch liked Clemson. So those three schools, there were plenty of discussions, right? And everybody came to an agreement. They knew Arch wanted to go to Texas, but everybody checked off the boxes. Arch talked about how he would talk to Peyton, talk to Eli for advice, ask questions, right? So everybody checked off on the offense. But to the receivers, to this point, and I'm a broken record on this, but anytime I get into the recruiting conversation with TJ Ford, a buddy of mine who I covered for years, obviously Texas fans know him. He always says, Jerry, the number one thing is always going to be, because whenever we talk about NIL or whatnot, so the number one thing is always going to be hearing your name called on draft night. He said, that's always number one with all of us. He said, the rest, the NIL's great. He said, but we want to hear our name called on draft night. That's been the dream since growing up. So I think that it really resonates with kids. I think after Worthy and Mitchell go, if they go first, second round, or chance they both go first round, late first round, that would be huge. But even if one goes first round, one goes second round, then Sark can just kind of add them to his resume of guys he's recruited or coached at the wide receiver position. Different, Nick Saban recruited those guys to Bama, but Sark called the offense. But he has the resume's building at the wide receiver position. And when you see the big plays, Xavier Worthy in punt return game, right? Playing the wide receiver, playing multiple spots, getting a lot of targets. Adonai Mitchell coming over from Georgia with his 2 national title rings and having his best college season at Texas. Statistically, I think all that stuff is great for recruiting.
All right. Well, before we move on, Jerry Hamilton, I'm going to go ahead and let you a little early this morning tell folks out there about Manscaped.
Oh man, hold on. I gotta tell you, I need a little time for this one. I need a little time. I didn't have my read didn't pop up for me this morning, so I need a second here on this.
I tell you what, I'll give you some visual.
No, it's here now. It's here now. We got it. Hold on.
I'm buying you a few seconds.
No, we got it. Okay. Guys, it's that time of the morning. It's 2024 St. Patrick's Day, okay? We're getting to that point in time. Top of the morning. This episode's brought to you by the St. Patrick's Day Shamrock Shavers, Manscaped. This year, don't just chase rainbows. Make your own pot of gold and groom that little leprechaun with the leaders and below the kilt care. Say goodbye to your Clover Force with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and let your confidence shine bright. Embrace the luck of the Irish and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. Head on over to manscaped.com and use On Texas all caps for 20% off plus free shipping. On Texas all caps, 20% off plus free shipping. Hey, this is exactly what y'all want to hear from me. Ever since I've used Manscaped, I can proudly say I found my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Shouldn't you too?
I think you need to do it in an Irish accent tomorrow.
I don't have that one. Maybe the voiceover.
24 hours to work on it. Oh, man. E. Kim says, need to have Bobby read. You got to go back to Monday's episode and you can have that.
Yeah, no. If anybody didn't hear that, you got to go find that. He wore the big Texas hat and all of it.
I think I'm going to have to clip that out and put it as like a YouTube short on our channel or something like that. All right, y'all. Well, we got time for questions. A lot of questions already, but please get your questions in. We'll get to as many as we can. And let's start with this one from E. Kim.
Yep.
Morning from Rockford, Illinois. What do you think what do y'all think the stats for Quinn will be this season?
I want to turn this to a question for Coach. What do you think a successful season for Quinn will be?
Well, I think stat-wise, I'd look for it to be very similar to this year. I just don't – I mean, he's losing some great receivers. He's got some great ones coming back up. I look for stats to be very, very similar. Certainly, if he can stay healthy, he and repeat what he did this year, he needs to certainly be in the Heisman conversation. But nothing short of him leading us to a national championship game, I think is what most of us, I don't know if you could say expect it, but we're certainly hoping that the program will continue to evolve. And he seems to be a guy that could take us to the next level. He's playing with so much more confidence, than he was his sophomore year.
Yeah, I agree with that. As far as stats, statistically, I think the number is if you could get the 5-to-1 TD interception ratio number, that would be very big. I don't know about yards. I mean, I know people like to talk about that. I'm not sure about yards. That running clock on first downs, for the majority of the game in college football, if that takes away roughly a possession a game for you, that affects your stats, those long-term stats, season-ending stats. So when we look at the stats over a 12-game period, if he starts all 12 games, if you can go 5-to-1 TD-INT ratio, he's going to have a heck of a year. That's the one thing I'll say more than yards itself. The other thing is it's so similar to last season for me. Last year, game 2 was at Alabama, and you knew Alabama was still good, but offensively they couldn't overwhelm you. They didn't have that type of talent on offense with a first-year starting quarterback, new offensive coordinator. You didn't really know what Jalen Milroe would become. And I say that because Quinn had a tremendous game there. Texas goes up to Michigan. If it's a repeat performance and Texas beats Michigan, new coaching staff, 6 offensive linemen at the combine off to the NFL, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum. I mean, they lost a lot. The tight end's a freaking stud coming back. He's a first-rounder. From Idaho, the young kid from Idaho, Loveless. But it's so similar to me. If Texas goes up there, Quinn has a really good day. They beat the defending national champs. He's going to vault to the top of the Heisman race really quickly. If he doesn't start number 1, if he has a good day there, he will vault himself to number 1.
Yeah.
I agree with Burnt Orange Horn. Staying healthy should be the main stat for Quinn.
And let me say this. Quinn had got down to about 6'3", 195 pounds at the beginning of last season. I'm expecting to be back to 210, but a stronger body 210. He stripped the bad weight, really got dedicated himself to nutrition, And now the last piece of that's building that strength up on his frame. I expect him, from what I'm hearing, to be back around 210 this year, but he's going to look different.
All right, y'all. Well, I got a little surprise that I want to bring in for Coach Shipley.
Yes.
And
Hey,
Jaxon, how you doing this morning?
What's up?
I'm good. What's going on, y'all?
and we weren't going to tell your pops we were bringing you on Thursday, but hey, Jaxon, we talk about all these receivers, but we wanted to talk to a big time receiver, man. I mean, I want to get your initial what's your reaction was to Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell's performance in the combine?
Oh man. First, well, let's start off with AD Mitchell. First, I think I was probably in line with most people. We're pretty surprised by AD Mitchell's 4.3.
Yeah.
I knew he could move pretty good. I watch a lot when I go to the games. I watch a lot of just how savvy route runners are, and just their fluidity in and out of routes, and how they're able to decelerate and accelerate out of routes. And you could tell all year that Adonai Mitchell was really could do a really good job of that. I didn't know that he had quite the straight line speed, so it was pretty awesome to see him put up the numbers that he did. And you know what he can do on the field. You know he can make the contested catches. He's got really strong hands. He's going to go up and make a lot of those contested catches that he's shown really throughout his career, not just at UT. So that was really awesome. I think he is going to vault himself, probably up, I would assume, at least somewhere close to the first round, if he's not in the back end of the first round. And then Xavier Worthy, I don't think anyone was surprised that he hit a 4.2, but to run the fastest one ever, I mean, what an awesome thing, not just for him, but for the whole world to witness. And as a UT fan, it gives you some pride there.
Hey, now to the fun part. So my dad was a coach, so I grew up a ball boy on the sidelines. I assume you did too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so when your dad was mad at the ref, did he ever just walk down and kind of like knock the ball out of your hand or do anything like that? And were you ever involved at the in the game where Pops was mad at the ref or anything? Do you have any great stories from back in the day? Because that's what I'm here for.
I better keep my mouth shut on this one.
No.
My dad was just always 100% in, and that's the thing I remember growing up. A lot of people don't realize the age difference between Jordan and I, and we're actually 6.5 years apart. So when Jordan graduated high school, I was only in 5th grade. And a lot of people just don't realize the age gap there. So I was always the younger brother, the one that was, I was on the sidelines, but I was on the sidelines with a couple of my real young, technically still elementary school buddies, and watching my dad, just the passion that he coached with, and everything he did was with intensity and with focus and just 100% in. So whether that was coaching and calling plays or whether that was getting after the refs, he did it 100%.
I got a question for the both of you. And I remember, Bob, when you were coaching in Brownwood, Jaxon, you were there, and I'd go over there to see y'all. And I know y'all had lots of moments together, but is there a moment that stood out on the football field, as a father-son combo, duo, whatever you want to say, that really sticks out more than any other?
Ooh. Well, I would say for me, first of all, I'm somewhat of a homer. But I think that Jaxon is probably the most underrated receiver to ever play at Texas. I mean, we played in some, with a lot of different quarterbacks in a not great time in the history of our program, and still wind up being a third leading receiver in the history of the program. That's you don't just do that. Obviously, there's been thousands of receivers at Texas, and for Jaxon, I always wish he would have had, and really the same thing in high school. Jordan had the same quarterback, Stephen McGee, his sophomore, junior, senior year. And, Jaxon wound up breaking his collarbone his junior year and missed the first 5 games. And then our starting quarterback broke his leg the week before Jaxon came back. And so he never got to play with his starting quarterback until his senior year in high school. And the funnest time that I had with Jaxon probably was when we played Stephenville in Brownwood, and they had wiped up the field with us a couple of years prior to that. And the year before that, Jaxon didn't get to play in that game, and our quarterback got hurt. But we came in and beat them pretty handily, and that was an awful lot of fun.
What about you, Jaxon?
Yes. Yeah, that was a good experience, just with the this rivalry there that goes back between, for those that don't know, I mean, Brownwood and Stephenville go way, way back, and only being an hour apart from one another. It's a pretty violent rivalry throughout the years. And so to be able to be a part of that was awesome, especially having not been a part of it my junior year, being injured. So that was great. I think probably, honestly, my favorite memory was we played Graham my junior year and got to play against my old pal Case McCoy, and Brad was coaching on the other sidelines, and just kind of everything had built up for years on that. I mean, Case and I grew up probably first or second grade, throwing passes at the ACU football games in Abilene, and so just to go through that, and then to be at the games with our brothers throughout the years. I mean, we'd sit in the stands together, for years before this game. So it was really cool to get to experience that. And then the way that game went down it was just a really awesome experience. It was a DQ big game of the week and everything. So I think just to have that experience with my dad, and not only with my dad, I know it's not as fun of a memory for Case and Brad probably there, but for the Shipleys, it was a good weekend.
That's the one where y'all won like 28-27, wasn't it? I was at that.
It was a blocked field goal at the end to win it.
No, a block extra point.
Or a blocked extra point. Sorry.
Yeah. A block extra point. Case McCoy led them in an unbelievable last-minute drive. The length of the field, literally the length of the field, scored, and then we had just a freak athlete, Derek Longoria, broke through and blocked the extra point to seal the win for us. It was a lot of fun.
It was awesome. And I will say this too. I mean, that was my first experience with Case in a real live with pads on football setting. And I just remember walking away from that game thinking Case had so much grit, and he battled till the very end, and he played his tail off, and just the leadership qualities that he showed throughout that especially the whole back half of that game was pretty awesome to witness. And they went on, and Brad coached them up to go all the way, and played the state championship that year. So they had a really awesome team, and I think we may have just stole one from them there. I think they may have been the better team. I don't know, but it was fun to get to watch them.
Hey, we have a very important question in the chat from the people in the comments. So we got to get your answer on this because I don't know it. Blake, can you pull that one up from Bobby Petronic?
Oh, yeah, here we go. What was Jaxon's favorite pass that he completed as a college football player?
Oh, man.
1,000%.
Well,
tell the whole story about your history.
Yeah, I think I may have told this before. I don't know, but when I was in high school, that junior year, like Dad was saying, we had a bunch of injuries. Our starting quarterback, who was really good, was injured, and backup quarterback tears his knee up. So we had to take a receiver that had never played quarterback before and basically just throw him in there. We had nobody else. There was nobody. And so he was playing quarterback. So we threw in some packages here and there for me to do some Wildcat stuff. And I had an okay arm. I mean, it wasn't great, but I think in my high school career, I think I threw 3 passes and 2 were interceptions. So, but Coach Harsin called me after he got hired, and first thing he said on the phone was, "Are you ready to throw some touchdown passes?" I was like, "Man, he must not know much about my experience with quarterback." But anyway, so just getting some opportunities to redeem myself a little bit in college was great. And Coach Harsin was, people say what they want about Coach Harsin. He was definitely a very creative mind, and especially as an offensive coordinator, he he always had a lot of belief in me. And, as a player, that is something that, it does a lot for a player to know that their offensive coordinator believes in them and that their coaches believe in them. And so he gave me an opportunity to get to do some kind of out of the box type stuff. And my favorite one, though, was definitely the one at Texas A&M, throwing to Blaine Irby for a touchdown there. That will be probably a pretty core memory of mine for a long time.
There you go. Hey, I've had about 3 people text me since you've been on. They all had the same question. Because Xavier Worthy was on Sports Center yesterday and talked about playing in the Steve Sarkisian offense and how that prepares him for the NFL. I want your perspective, kind of your thoughts on watching Steve Sarkisian's offense, being a receiver that had over 50 catches 3 straight years at Texas, I believe that was. But yeah, kind of your thoughts, what you've seen from Steve Sarkisian at the wide receiver position, and just your general thoughts on that.
First, I'll say Coach Sarkisian. I'm a huge Sarkisian fan. I think everything he stands for, not just the X's and O's. I love the way that he carries himself. I love the way that he approaches the media. I love the way he treats people. Just everything about Coach Sarkisian and the way he handles and steers the ship. I'm a huge fan. So we'll start there, and then secondly, as far as just the way that he schemes up teams, the way that he puts players in the right positions, and has just he has a lot of opportunities for receivers to make plays, a lot of opportunities for quarterbacks to find the open guy. For me, I would have absolutely loved to have played in an offense like his. It seems like that he always has different route concepts that somebody's going to be open one way or another. It's a lot of times it's going to fall to the quarterback being able to see it, and sometimes as a quarterback, you're only one person with one set of eyes. And so you're not going to see every single thing. But I think that what Coach Sark has done a really good job of is preparing his quarterbacks to know where the open reads are going to be versus different looks. And one of the things that many people that are listening to this may not realize is that when you're in high school, there's just not a whole lot of defensive coverage recognition from a quarterback and especially from a receiver position, but we'll just leave it at quarterback. So when you get to college, there's not a whole lot of quarterbacks that can actually tell you in real life situation when you're playing at game speed, they can tell you not only what the defensive coverage is on the back end, but what they may be rolling to, at the snap of the ball. And sometimes defenses, they'll hold that until the last second, and then they'll roll coverages. And so I know Coach Sarkisian prepares his quarterbacks really well for just what they're getting on the back end, different recognition stuff. As a receiver, you don't typically have just a ton of stuff in college, at least, that you're having to know as far as every single coverage. You're going to need to know your base coverages. You're going to need to know cover 0, cover 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then as you get into the NFL, there's 100 coverages or variations of different coverages that branch off of that. But at the end of the day, I think those guys they have a scheme that is unmatched. I think Coach Sark is on the cutting edge of everything offensively. And I think that he puts guys in the right place. I think he recruits the right kind of players for his offense. And I was this kind of player where, I wasn't necessarily the fastest guy ever, but I think there's a lot of value in someone who you can count on to make a contested catch or to be in the right spot, but also to win one-on-one battles with safeties and with linebackers and stuff like that. And I think that Whittington was that perfect guy this year. He's certainly got the speed, but just to have a guy like A.D. Mitchell on the outside that's a burner that can go make the contested play, and then you've got Worthy on the other side that can, rip past the defense. And then you've got a guy like Whittington that can find the open spaces and can win the one-on-one battles in the middle. I think Coach Sark he knew the strengths of each of his guys. And I think that's one of his biggest attributes as a coach is just knowing who his players are and then getting full buy-in from his players. And I know Dad can probably speak to this more than I can, but I think there's a lot to be said about culture. There's a lot to be said about a coach really actually knowing his players and not putting on a facade. And you see that right now when you hear these guys do interviews at the combine. You hear these things that they don't have to say the things that they're saying to praise Coach Sark. There's nobody that's telling them that they have to do that. They're doing that because it's real and it's authentic and it's genuine, and they saw it and they felt it, and it meant a lot to them, and they know where this program is headed. And all you have to do when you want to know the nature of a program is you listen to guys that have, that are leaving the program, or guys, that don't have to say certain things. And it's pretty telling when they say things that tell about the culture of the program and the leadership that's there.
Jaxon, one thing that I wanted to ask you last time you were on, and we just didn't have time, and this will be the last one, then we'll let you go. I know you're busy, but can we get your thoughts on the move to the SEC, what you may be looking forward to, and just your overall thoughts in general?
Yeah, I think it's a great move. I think I may be in the minority here, I don't know, but it seems like the Big 12 has been, you have a few teams every year, but it's pretty stagnant, or has been, compared to the SEC. And I think just the excitement of being in the SEC, I think the recruiting advantage of being in the SEC, and more than anything else, I think, if you're winning in the SEC, you are one of the top dogs, and there's no debating that. There's no, well, we beat this team, and so we should be here versus here. You're playing the top teams in the nation, and if you're winning, you're a top team in the nation. There's no arguments about that. So that's that. And then secondly, just as a fan, I'm excited to go to some of these games and just take my family, take my two boys. I've got two boys. One's about to be 8 and one's about to be 5, and they love it. And so just to get to take them in an era where the Longhorns are really at the top of college football is exciting. And then to get to be in an atmosphere, an SEC type atmosphere, most of the games is going to be just exciting from a fan standpoint.
Hey, we had a super chat. We can't let you get out of here without the super chat. Like, UT boy has a question.
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't even see that until you said it. He says, "Give us the scouting report on the young Shipleys."
On the young Shipleys, I'll send in some flag football highlights for y'all.
Very perfect. We'll play anything.
Hey, I am coaching both of their teams, and so it's fun for me. It's just growing up as a coach's kid. It was something I was always around, but it gives me the opportunity to get to be around my kids. Not just that, but to get to share in those memories with them. And obviously, I'm passionate about football, but it's not about that. It's about just getting to spend time with them, doing something that we all love. But I will say about my oldest one, I'm trying to get him into different sports right now. All he wants to do is play receiver and play football and run routes around the house. And so we typically got the mattresses set up, and both of my boys were throwing diving passes most nights.
That's awesome.
Jaxon knows the recipe, because there's a lot of people say, man, your kids are so talented. They just seem so natural. Well, how many times of course, it was easier for Jaxon because he had me or Jordan throwing him passes.
Yeah.
But they would set the cushions out and run down the hall and make diving catches on cushions. And if they were awake, they were wanting to catch a ball. You can't wait till you're a teenager to learn how to have soft hands and learn how to position your body and all that stuff. It literally starts when you're young like that. And Jaxon is pretty passionate about working with his kids. And the fun thing is that they want to do it. They love it. They're eating up with it. And so anyway, they're learning young. And for those of you that have grandkids or sons that are young, don't expect the junior high coach to start teaching them how to be a football player. You got to start working with them. Just throw them ping pong balls, throw them tennis balls, throw them anything you can, working on their hand-eye coordination, because you can't wait till you get pads on to start learning how to be a football player, especially a skilled player.
Hey, what's great about what you just said is that means you have to put the phone down. You can't catch ping pong balls if you're in your phone.
Let me add to that real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So for those that are dads out there that have boys, or like my dad said, or well, I'll say mostly as a dad, not so much as a granddad, but as a dad, I have a history, a past of spent about 4 or 5 years where I was working exclusively with receivers across the state of Texas, and doing a lot of just different training and helping receivers out. And a lot of times you see these kids that come as high schoolers or as middle schoolers, and they just look so stiff and unnatural, and their hands are just, they catch the ball like they got two plates out in front of them, and it takes a long time to get people like that to get natural. And the best thing that you can do as a dad, I mean, again, I think there are much more important things in life than your kid being a good athlete. I think more than that, there's an eternal purpose to our life. But when we're talking about you want to be good at sports and you want your kids to be natural, it doesn't have to be some stressful something where you're, coaching your kids so much as just get a ball out and just start tossing it around, and then make fun competitions and just make it all fun. But you're tossing passes to them, you're throwing them passes, and what you notice is that more than anything else, when you talk about catching the ball, a lot of it has to do, it's really more with your eyes than it is with your hands. And if you think about closing your eyes and imagine someone throwing a pass to you, I mean, how confident do you feel catching that pass? You don't, because your eyes, well, your hands are like the hardware, your eyes are like the software that are going to provide information to your hands. And so it's gonna allow the process of getting really natural at catching. It's gonna allow that to be shortcutted and be a lot more natural if you start younger, even if there's no coaching involved, but you just have passes, just tossing it to them, because they're going to naturally develop that hand-eye coordination and catching that. So not that this is what this whole segment was about, but since you brought it up.
That's awesome. Great. No, that was great. That's why we're here, man. That was awesome. Better than I would have explained it.
Yeah, for sure. Phenomenal insight. No doubt about it. Well, Jaxon, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for surprising your dad and keeping it a secret for these days. We've been looking forward to it. And again, thank you for coming on.
Of course. Awesome, guys. Hook 'em. Thanks for having me.
All right, Jaxon.
All right. Love you. See you.
All right, Jaxon Shipley. And Jerry, Bob and Jaxon aren't going to brag, but that Brownwood team that they were talking about was seriously one of the funnest football teams to watch. And Bob, you had Derek Longoria. You had Kevin, Ethan Horton. I mean, all those guys were just great football players. And that was seriously one of my favorite teams, was coming and seeing y'all. I think I got to see y'all 2 or 3 times that year. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was a little undersized linebacker that you wouldn't even do a double take on when you see him get out of the bus. Was 3A defensive player of the year, and just little defensive lineman guys that you wouldn't even look at twice again. And Pops De La Paz was one of the best defensive linemen I've ever coached, but you would never know it by looking at him. But they had an edge to them. They loved playing. They loved representing the Brownwood Lions. They loved being with each other 24 hours a day. Our house was, who's that under that? Oh, I don't even know you. They're sleeping all over the floor. And but that was, and it's so fun to be in a community where the expectation, of the football team, kids grow up wanting to be a Brownwood Lion, for example. That's fun. And those guys loved every minute of it, and I sure loved coaching them.
Hey, Coach, Jaxon brought up something that I want to ask you about, because I'm of the opinion that in college football today, a head coach, his staff, really the head coach, has to be extremely genuine. Because I think we live in a day and age where any interview, let's just use Steve Sarkisian's, ever done, a Texas player recruit can go find on YouTube, can go find on social media, right? Can you explain the importance of that genuineness, especially when you're trying to build your culture and set your expectations? Because you can't fake it as a head coach.
No.
It will not work.
No, that's so true. You can't hide it from those guys. They're a lot smarter, and they're a lot more in tune to even nonverbal stuff than you would imagine. But I think that's a great point, and I think I think some coaches learn from the old school way of just being a hardcore person all the time, and obviously people win that way. I mean, there are a lot of coaches that are hardcore that win and win big, but it's a dying breed.
Yes.
The Urban Meyers and people like that were just hardcore, in your face kind of guys. it's too easy now for kids to go play for somebody else. And so I think that's a great point. I think that's what Sark has been able to do. And he's that way. I worked for him for a few months, and he's that way with everybody, the custodian, with everybody in the building. He's exactly the same person all the time. And there's a genuineness and a not over doting or anything like that, but just a genuine, when you look at him, he looks at you in the eyes, and you can see in his eyes and hear in his voice a genuine concern for you and wanting to hear what you have to say. And it's not easy to do that. There's a fine line of having a team that where the kids take advantage of that.
Right.
Still have to be able to say, I mean business. But I never have really understood why most kids, as we were talking about earlier, I think you were mentioning, Jerry, that people were saying that every kid wants to be in the NFL. They want to hear their name called out.
Right.
Well, every kid that signs a scholarship to play for the University of Texas or for any FBS school, their plan is to play in the NFL. And I think Sark does a good job of keeping them focused on what we have to do to get you to that level. Help our football team, but help you get to your level, the level that you want to get at as well, and keep that being the focus and the team being the focus, and not do it my way or hit the highway kind of deal. And we've seen that recently there, and it didn't work.
For sure. Hey, Blake, real quick, I want to reset recruiting because we've got a lot of people join. A lot on TexasFootball.com. A lot of official visitor news. That June 21st through 23rd official visit weekend's up to 17 confirmations now. That includes the twins, two of the triplets at Cedar Hill, Jordan Coleman, Devin Coleman. If you haven't seen that, I did a story on TexasFootball.com. First time I've ever covered triplets that are all legitimate Division I Power 5 level players. Two of those guys, Jordan Coleman at Cedar Hill and Devin Coleman, Jordan 6'5", 360, and not fat. Devin 6'4.5", 320. Both of them squat 570, 600 in that range. Theirs coming in June 21st through 23rd. So is Jamie French, the big-time receiver out of Jacksonville Mandarin. He's coming in April 6th. Now he put it out that he's coming in June 21st through 23rd for his official visit. He is A.D. Mitchell with more stop-start after the catch. That's what he is. I mean, he is a tremendous talent, a guy that will hear his name called if he does it right. If he maximizes his talent, does all the right things. Then the linebacker, Mateo Tongai, I believe it is, out of San Clemente. I think he's one of the top outside linebackers in the country, bar none. Unbelievable snap count anticipation, range, quickness, takes really good pursuit angles, long arms, physical guy on contact, very physical player. He's out of San Clemente in California. Terrible area to go visit a prospect, let me tell you. I might have to get out there. But he's coming in June 21st through 23rd. Then D-tackle. Texas fans are asking about D-tackle. Kenny Baker, the new defensive line coach hire. He'll begin coaching spring ball here in 12 days. He's got a big job in front of him to get Sadir Mitchell, Alfred Collins, Aaron Bryant, Alex January, all these guys ready to go. He's got a big job in front of him, but on the recruiting trail, Zion Williams out of Lufkin, the latest national recruit out of Lufkin High School there. He's officially visiting June 21st through 23rd. I've said a number of times. I spoke with Zion. Spoke with Zion at a track meet a couple of weeks ago. I really believe LSU's 1A, Texas is 1B, A&M's 3, and TCU's a distant 4th right now. That's where this thing's headed into the spring. So Zion will be at LSU this weekend for an unofficial visit. He'll also officially visit LSU. He'll be at LSU spring game April 13th. He says he'll be at Texas spring game April 20th. So that'll be a nice little battle royale between LSU, Texas, Bo Davis, Kenny Baker, Brian Kelly, Steve Sarkisian, for a guy from Lufkin, Texas. He wears the purple and yellow in high school. That doesn't mean he's going to LSU, but he does feel comfortable in Baton Rouge. He sees pine trees. It feels like East Texas to him. So I think LSU and Texas are going to battle it out there for one of the nation's top D linemen who happens to be in East Texas, and a number of other official visitors confirmed for the 14th through 16th and 21st through 23rd. One other one I didn't mention before. There's so much going on. I mean, the brain can only handle so much and function, especially with my minor IQ. Jordan Davison, the running back out of Mater Dei, he told me last night he has his Texas official visit date locked in. He's not ready to announce it quite yet. That could happen today, tomorrow, whenever. I think he's going to announce multiple official visits the same day, possibly. I think Texas, Ohio State, Alabama are the three out in front of everybody else right now for Jordan Davison, who's very similar skill set to Christian Clark last year. Similar body type, further along in his development, physically being at Mater Dei, but similar skill sets, really fits that inside zone scheme. Good downhill power back at 5'11", 210. He'll be 220 in time. So Jordan Davison will visit in June. He just hasn't announced that date. Then the big unofficial visitor news yesterday for me, late last night, I talked to Jonah Williams at Galveston Ball, 4-star safety. Oklahoma lean headed into the spring. They've done the best job recruiting him at safety long-term. The whole way through, and plus the baseball component. But Jonah Williams will be on campus April 6th for an unofficial visit. And he told me he'll be back in June for an official visit. He'll officially visit Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, Oregon, maybe Ohio State as well. I think those are really the 5 schools in play. He might take a couple of unofficials. He's going to LSU this weekend, LSU with Corey Raymond. Those guys, they're really trying to get into the mix. But Jonah Williams will be on campus twice. Before he probably announces that decision right before his senior season. So a lot going on in recruiting. There's even more at ontexasfootball.com. I have updates on Kylan Deere, the running back out of Quitman, Mississippi. Isaiah Brown, the defensive end out of Warner Robins, who Texas recently offered. He's talking about a visit. He spoke with Kenny Baker this week. And then Darian Norris, the D tackle out of Spruce Creek there in Port Orange, Florida, in that Orlando area. He was offered by Tashard Choice and Kenny Baker March 5th. He's talking about coming in for an unofficial visit and possibly official visit. And I think that's one Texas is going to have a real shot at after he hits campus. So a lot going on in recruiting. I'll try to keep you updated the best I can, either here on TexasFootball.com. Some stuff will happen on social media as well.
The comment said it best, Jerry. You're a machine, a recruiting machine. There's no doubt about it. Well, you pretty much nailed recruiting, so we'll go back to some team-related questions here. But before we do that, I need one more time to tell folks out there about Rick Vavro and Austin Underground. And since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives them the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick Vavro and his team offer an end-to-end client experience, including seamless communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid, quality work every single time. That's Austin Underground, and we want to thank them and Rick for sponsoring today's show. Oh, Michael Hernandez wants to know, with all this pressure on Quinn Ewers, how much more pressure is it on the offensive line to protect and give Quinn time for 2, maybe 3 reads?
What you got, Coach?
Well, I think that's always going to be an issue. And again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but a healthy offensive line is the best way to protect Quinn. I think we'll have some depth, but it is going to be, and I think you'll wind up seeing people try to do some pretty unique things to put pressure on him because he's shown what he can do if he has the time. But I think that's a valid point, and it's certainly as the success Quinn has throwing the ball will be the unsung heroes up front, as they always are. Because if you're not talking about the offensive line, that means you're doing a good job.
That's right. And I'll say this. I think there's a big challenge, a new challenge for the Texas offensive line in 24. Longer levered athletes in the SEC coming off the edge. There's going to be more of those guys, a lot more of those guys on the Texas schedule in 24 than there have been previous years in the Big 12 on average, right? Just go look at the NFL draft and combine and everything. So these offensive tackles, Cam Williams, welcome to being your first-year starter. You get to go into the SEC. So, but his play is, I think, going to be huge for Texas this year at right tackle.
Well, let's jump over to the other side of the football. Longest Horn says, do you think Alfred Collins would do well to add weight or lose weight or maybe even stay where he's at? He personally would like to see him beef up and try to be like another number 95, Chris Jones.
I think, what is he, 315-ish in that area, or he was last year? I think he's carrying plenty of weight. I want to see him carry plenty of attitude and motor this year. That's my biggest thing for him is snap. Coach can speak to this as a guy who had to, put his faith in players. Snap to snap consistency. When your guy that talented, if he has snap to snap consistency, he's going to vault up NFL draft boards this year.
Yeah, I think I actually helped recruit him and got a great mom, and he's just an outstanding kid. As a matter of fact, he's almost too good of a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that speaks to what you were alluding to, Jerry, the fact that he needs to have maybe a little bit bigger chip on his shoulder. Play with he plays with some enthusiasm when he does some good things, but I just mean, just developing. I used to tell kids, you have to find a way to play with an edge. And if you don't have a chip on your shoulder, manufacture one, make one. Waterboy did a pretty good job of manufacturing and making up scenarios to get him mad to come off the ball or whatever. That's a joke, but it's still somewhat true. And that you have to find some way to motivate yourself to play. Just be one of those, be a dog, just be a dog. And he's the kind that, you love to bring home, meet mama. He's as nice a kid and polite and respectful. And I love the way he was raised. But when between the whistles, man, you got to be a dog.
And to Coach's point, if anybody hasn't seen it, I happened to watch I Hate Christian Laettner, the 30 for 30 on Christian Laettner the other night after the lead was lost in Waco and the game was over. And if you haven't seen I Hate Christian Laettner, to Coach's point, one of the things that made Christian Laettner a great player, there were many more guys more talented than he was, right? Now, he could shoot it, but he was a total dog, whether that was as a leader in practice, whether that was always wanting the ball at the end of the game in clutch situations, maybe borderline on some Brock Cunningham stuff in game. But to Coach's point, if you haven't seen I Hate Christian Laettner, if you want to see everything that defines what Coach just said and why it's so important, go look that one up.
And then here's a good question from Glenn Keller. He says, if they did make an early signing period in spring or early summer, how do you think that would affect a slow player like Sark? Do you think it would make flipping guys more difficult?
I think that's a great question. So here's been my point. I know Bobby and I differ on this a little bit. A lot of people are asking where they can get a Shipley Ranch hat, so I'll let Coach address that at some point. But here's what I've said all along about that. I think a June signing period, a late June signing period, I'm not sure if the number is 30%, 40%, 50%. It's not going to be 100% of guys aren't going to sign then, right? But what it will do is the kids that have 100% made their decision, or they're going to school X come hell or high water, got their NIL deals in place. That's just reality, right? I think a lot of those kids would sign and get it over with, especially if you're an early enrollee. If you know where you're going, you've been through this process since you were a sophomore in high school or freshman, and you've been on all these campuses multiple times. You've used 5, 6, 7, 8, who knows how many official visits nowadays. It's unlimited, right? But if you've been through the process, you have your NIL deal in place and everything is in place, I think there's a percentage of those kids that would sign, right? And protect yourself from injury as well. So in case you get injured, I should say. So I think there's so many things that go into it. I don't think we'd see 80% of kids necessarily sign in a late June signing period because there will be some that would wait for that December signing period. But what it would do is the kids that want to absolutely be done with the process could be done with the process because they've gone through the entire process, and it would take some of the weight off the coaching staffs, high school and college in a way. It might make it tougher on high school coaches, but for the college coaches, they don't have to worry about recruiting all 30, 25 guys in their class. That number just got shaved in half. Now, coach might say something from a high school perspective. If a kid signs in late June, what's his incentive? That's the problem for high school coaches, right?
Well, it is, but if you're signing a guy in June and he shuts it down his senior year because he's already got his scholarship, he ain't the kind of guy you want anyway.
Great point.
I mean, that's not a guy that is going to help the university anyway. But I just, I remember back, it seemed like, back in the golden years of Mac's recruiting, he would tell us, don't offer a kid unless you want him, because you're good. I mean, if we offered a kid, he committed right then. And so, and then we started offering kids younger and younger. And so it got to the point where kids that didn't really develop until their senior year, that they were left out, So I hate to see, us go wholeheartedly into a kid at 16 years old or maybe just turned 17. And some kids are just late. They just develop late. I hate to get to the point where we're not giving late bloomers an opportunity or saving a scholarship for them. It seems like we're, a lot of high school kids are worried about the transfer portal, and a guy that gets another year's eligibility to make it number 7 or number 8, they're taking away scholarships from high school kids when they continue to do that. So I'm not sure about that early signing.
It's a great topic because it goes both ways for sure.
It really does. It really
or
does.
9 years in the case of the Miami tight ends, who was granted a 9th year of eligibility.
Yeah, that's right.
As Jerry said, Coach Shipley, we have a super chat for you from Brandon Huey. Thank you, Brandon. He says, where can we get a Shipley Ranch at?
Well, what we got to do, we don't have them for sale, but what we need to do maybe tomorrow is just have a little trivia or something. And we'll give away a couple of Shipley Ranches caps.
That's great, Blake. You got you're on it for the trivia questions, Blake.
Yeah, come up with some good ones, Blake.
I will. Y'all put me on the spot, but I will for sure. All right, guys, we got time for just a couple more questions, and we got to get out of here. This one from Tyler. Who do y'all think will run the Big 12 with OU and Texas gone? I think I know where Jerry's going to go with his answer.
Yeah, I'll get coaches mind going on this one. So I was all in on Arizona next year before the coaching change. I thought Jed Fish had that thing right where you'd want it going into the Big 12. A lot of really good defensive players that were coming back, young quarterback, receiver that's a future first rounder, good running back, solid offensive line coach, Johnny Nansen, obviously DC. They had a lot of good things going for them. Obviously, then they go through their change. And so we'll see what Arizona looks like with first-year head coach and how much change there's going to be. You never know in the portal after the spring. I think Texas Tech is going to be good. I think they're recruiting long-limbed guys with speed, enough of those guys. I think they're set up well in the Big 12. I'm interested to see what TCU does. I'm never going to rule out Mike Gundy, right? I mean, just when you think that he's done, he's in the Big 12 championship. They get blown out by South Alabama 33-7, and everybody's like, is he retiring next week? Big 12 championship game. So you can't ever count him out. Coach, I don't know who you kind of look at. Utah, I think, is going to be very tough in the Big 12.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for me to predict what's going to happen with these with the new teams coming in, because I just don't know enough about them. Obviously, Utah is going to be a contender, especially if they get their quarterback back and he's healthy. He's proven to be one of the best in the country. But I'm with you on Gundy. How many times has that guy been counted out? And yet he continually does more with less year in. You got to put up with some of his rants and some of the stuff that he throws out there. But I say Oklahoma State is going to be the TDB. But I also agree Tech is getting some really good players. And I know that has, the coach up there has turned a lot of Longhorns against him with his high school antics and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you, kids love playing for him.
Yes, they do.
And high school coaches love sending their kids to him.
No doubt.
And he may not be the prototypical successful college coach when you just watch some of his media stuff, but he is a great motivator. He's a great recruiter. If they can get their offense to be a little more consistent, I think Tech could be right up there with them. But needless to say, Utah will be the top, new team coming in.
Coach, I'm sure you had discussions with Mike Gundy over the years, right? He tried to recruit some of your players. What were your takeaways from Coach Gundy?
He is who he is. He doesn't try to be anything. That's what I love about him. He is who he is, and he doesn't try to put on a show or whatever. He's very comfortable in his own skin. Obviously, you don't wear a mullet that long, not be comfortable in your own skin. But I just think he's quietly turned into the old dean of Big 12 coaches, and I have a lot of respect for him. I have a lot of respect for the way he recruited my kids, but I also have a lot of respect for him just as a human being.
All right, y'all. This will be the last question for today. And it comes from Naaman Roberts. He says, we were the original DBU with Jammer, Ross, Huff, etc. With the talented 4 and 5 stars we have today, do y'all think we are on our way back?
I think what's interesting is coaches, what he's watching in the spring is the cornerback position. And that's a big one for him this spring. And look, I totally agree with him. And, look, the national title team had 4 first rounders and a 3rd rounder. I mean, that was the height maybe since 81, right? It's a great DBs in 81 on one team. That was about as good as we've seen at Texas. Look, I think the corners, I think the safety is going to be the most improved position in the program this year. I think the talent there's an influx of talent at safety that's undeniable, whether that's through the portal with Makuba or Derek Williams out of New Iberia Westgate, Xavier Filsaime coming in from McKinney, who's a high-end athlete, Jordan Johnson-Rebel. By the way, I was told yesterday Jordan Johnson-Rebel had one of the 2 fastest 10-yard splits of all the incoming freshmen, probably behind Ryan Wingo. That was interesting to me on Jordan Johnson-Rebel. Very instinctive player. But to Coach's point, it's the corners, right, Coach? I mean, that's where Texas has to take that next big step.
Yeah, I don't think that we're in the conversation for being called DBU at this point in time. That's something that sometimes we're homers a little bit,
Yes.
and think that. But I think personally we're a long way away from being that. I think it would have been a little easier to say that had Akina went ahead and followed through, and somehow we could have nabbed that guy. Because that just gives you hope, because he was the guy with all those first rounders you were talking about. But I think we have a ways to go. But I think that's should always be the goal, and should always be what you're preaching to those guys to uphold that. But reality is we're not DBU right now.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football. We want to thank Rick Vavro and Austin Underground, along with Manscaped, for sponsoring today's show. Got to give a big shout out to your son, Coach Shipley, Jaxon, for joining us. That was an awesome little segment there for sure. And then thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for the super chats. We definitely appreciate it. Head on over to ontexasfootball.com for more recruiting information. Jerry is just bringing it. It seems like every second of the day right now, along with team news and, of course, great discussion. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We would appreciate that. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime we go live or that we post a video. And for Bob Shipley and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.